Thanks, Ciaran Corlett. I just want to speak briefly in support of all of these amendments, which add a modicum of democratic accountability to the very significant power which is being given to the Minister. I would also just make the point that obviously we favoured mandatory hotel quarantine at a certain point in time. We called for mandatory hotel quarantine to be introduced across the board as part of a public health system, not to be outsourced, and for appropriate oversight to exist to ensure that people's civil liberties and human rights weren't being contravened. But we've now had the experience of how the government did their version of mandatory hotel quarantine. They did it in a partial way, where particular countries were targeted and others were not. They did it in a way that it was outsourced en masse to private corporations. They did it not as part of a public health system. It wasn't health service staff and so on that were involved in it, and they did it without taking account of the very serious issues that are raised here in terms of civil liberties and so on. And so here we are again, and the government has come back and say, well, now we want the capacity to bring in mandatory hotel quarantine. We want to do it without having to come back to the Dáil, as is correctly proposed in terms of these amendments. And that is a real problem for us, and we're opposed, therefore, to the bill. And especially now, in this concrete situation, like, what is the purpose of this going to be? And I think it's very hard to avoid the conclusion that it's going to be the government engaging in theatre, potentially racist theatre, saying that we're doing something about this problem. You know, you take, obviously this discussion is arising in the context of the Omicron variant and all of the talk about Southern Africa and so on, but Omicron has been detected in 26 countries as of yesterday. I think it could be up to 27 by now. Only 3 of those countries are in Africa, and the UK has the second highest number of detected Omicron cases in the world. The government is not going to introduce mandatory hotel quarantine for the UK, and therefore it illustrates the point that the way in which this is going to be used, and you have to see it in the context of Fortress Europe policies and so on. It's extremely troublesome in terms of the amount of power that is given and the way that it will be used to try and pretend that we're doing something when actually we're not addressing the issues here. Thanks.